Welcome to the Gentleman Project podcast. I'm Kirk Chugg.
And I'm Corey Moore. Today we have a very good friend, mentor, and a guy who's been extremely successful, certainly in his career. We have Bryce Blanchard with us. Bryce has done $3.8 billion in closed investment sales, spanning over 450 transactions, and is with Newmark, one of the principals at Newmark here in Utah. If you're in Utah, you already know Bryce because he knows everyone, and he's kind of a legend in investment business here. But today, we're going to talk about some things that Bryce does with his family, and he is definitely a family man. If you know Bryce, you know that he's focused on family, on coaching, on being there with his family and his kids. So, Bryce, thank you so much for being with us.
It is my pleasure, you guys, and a privilege to be with you, and I'm really impressed with what you're doing with the Gentleman Project.
Well, thank you. If you follow Bryce at all on social media or anything like that, you notice that about 90% of his posts are about his family and his kids, fun things that they go do together, quality time that they spend together. Maybe 10% is business. And well, maybe 5% is about the Utah Jazz.
Guilty as charged.
Huge Utah Jazz fan. But Bryce has become kind of synonymous with somebody who's plugged in. And you said something right before the podcast started, and it's one of my favorite quotes, is the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And I can see that really play into, as I've watched you as a father and as a professional, both of those have been a parallel path of progression. We really want to talk to you today about some of the things that you do as a father that have been successful, that you've maybe used in business as well, and the things that you've taught your kids. So talk to us a little bit about some of the things that you do with your children that have proven to be valuable lessons in your eyes and theirs.
Guys, being a father is so important to me. Every day, every single day, often multiple times a day, I think about my children by name. And I think to myself, what can I do to help them be successful today and to know that they're loved? And there's no substitute for that individual time. I'm sure lots of your guests have said that. I mean, finding the ability to have connected one-on-one time, preferably doing something that's their passion, which is hard for me because I'm a very ambitious guy and my schedule is filled. And so sometimes to my detriment, I try to fill them into things that I like. As I've grown as a father, what I've realized is what's more effective is figuring out what did they want to do and checking with them at their level, where they're comfortable, with no agenda. I think having fun with your kids one-on-one and letting them know how important they are speaks volumes to them. So that connection of one-on-one experiences, whether it's taking my son snowmobiling or rebounding for my daughter, there's just no substitute for that. The other thing that I feel like has been a priority for us is then family time dedicated, where just the six of us are in a room. And whether that's Sunday night planning meeting where we go through the week and we talk about logistics of dropping people off and what we're doing as a family, so we stay connected as a group. We do that every Sunday night. We literally have a weekly planning meeting where we discuss blocking and tackling and spend time together about what our goals are. We talk about the 4 areas of their life, physical, intellectual, spiritual, and social. And we talk about what they're doing in their life. And so there's that one-on-one time, and then there's that group time where we just stay connected as a family. Because as a father, it's important for me to foster not just my relationship with each child, but their inner relationships as children and their relationship with their mom. And that's my job as the leader of the pack. If you get some cracks in the armor as a family, whether it's kids that are not getting along or relationships that are on the edge with mom, you got as a father be sensitive to those things and create family fun together. And the other two things I would say would be, I've made it a point to coach them. I think I've coached 25 different teams. I'm not a soccer player, but I've coached soccer. I love baseball. I've coached baseball, basketball, softball, you name it. And that not only is that a fathering opportunity for my children in a cool context to learn life experiences, but it also allows them to see me interact with other children. And not everybody's got a great father figure in their life. And so not only have I taken on a feeling in my life to parent my 4 biological children, but I feel a desire to parent every child that I come across, and coaching has provided that opportunity as well. I feel like I've got hundreds little sons and daughters running around, mostly the South Valley of Salt Lake. And when I see them, it's usually a hug. And that for me has been a joy. And to spend that extra time with my kids to and from practice and being there, I think has been a pivotal part of the commitment I've made with my time to be with them. And the last thing I'd say to that is travel. I think as you look back in your family, the things that people remember the most, and obviously day to day is important, but those special opportunities to travel with your children, whether it's for their birthday or a family trip somewhere exotic, and then take pictures and videos. We recently uploaded all of our family photos and videos into a third-party cloud thing called Forever. And sometimes on Sunday night, I'll force the kids, and they end up loving it, of course, but we'll go through and we'll watch videos and pictures of them in different stages of our life on family trips. And I have found that has created a bonding experience for us as a family.
There's something about trips that just cement the time together because it's not the day-to-day. It's easy to forget the day-to-day, go to school, even some of the sports things, but when you, for some reason, when you get out of the norm, it cements that moment in your mind, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And it's a time to bond with your kids. So when you came in, Bryce, you came up with this idea because you knew you were going to be on the podcast to ask your kids what they thought you'd taught them. And so you told us that it was like no script. You asked them what question, walk us through what you did, what you asked them, and then what they said, because I'm super curious to see where this went.
Well, and I've only read these things, each one once, and there's been no filter, no reordering. I simply sent each one of my children a text. And what I sent to them was, can you share with me lessons or principles I have taught you as a father that have been most meaningful? So I think as fathers, we think maybe we know what's effective or what has been the lasting impressions or lessons we've taught to our kids. But what I thought would be a more interesting paradigm for me to share with you guys is what they think has been the most meaningful.
I love that.
So
we ask our customers, what they think about us all the time. Like, we got to get that feedback. Why wouldn't we ask our kids, what's working, what's not working, right?
Yeah. So I have 4 children. I've got 3 daughters and a son, ages 12 to 20. So these kind of reflect what they think has been the most important lessons. And I think we can either blow through these or we can stop and discuss each one. I'll let you guys take a tangent if you want. Sure. But here's what my 12-year-old daughter said, who's a total alpha, by the way. She's a little killer. She said, and you'll see a couple of these that have been repeated, which is cool because for me, then, okay, it's working. The emphasis is working. Her first one, she said, was work hard, play hard. And that's a motto that I think has been true for our family. The second thing, closely related, is always be productive and get things done before you go play. So there's an order to that work hard, play hard.
Right.
I always tell the kids, you got to earn your playtime by working first. The third thing she said was strive to make each day the best. One of the things I say to my kids as they're going out the door for school or whatever, I said, make today's the best day of your life. Even if it's the next mundane day of school, just that attitude of carpe diem and say, let's not, because none of us are promised anything in this life. And I've had several friends pass away this year, and it creates that urgency for me to instill in my children, be thankful every day just for the gift of life. My 20-year-old just got back from Zimbabwe, and she brought a unique perspective. And she said the Zimbabweans don't have a lot as measured by first world standards of living and prosperity. She said, but they have a authentic gratitude for each day just to breathe. And most of their day is spent, how do I stay alive today? How do I, eat and not get sick? How do I not get eaten by a lion?
Yeah.
I mean, they're like literally, but they're just happy to breathe and to eat and to see a sunset. And I think so much in this busy world that we have, first world, we put our happiness on things that are external. And what Hannah has been teaching our family is happiness and meaning and gratitude come each day from just recognizing the small things.
I love that.
So Miley said, be kind to everyone around you, even if it's someone you normally wouldn't choose to be friends with.
So this is your next daughter?
Still 12-year-old.
It's still the 12-year-old. Okay.
Clean as you go. when you make messes, clean them, and that makes you live in a better way.
Oh man. Do we all teach that one? And just like, if we could just internalize that one in our kids just a little bit.
When we get out of the car, take your stuff out, and your car's always clean. This is something we talk about. One of my phrases that they always throw back to me is, let's not choose to live in squalor. She always gets a laugh.
That's funny.
They all know the word squalor. The last one for the 12-year-old was, when you play sports, give it your all and go for every ball.
Cool.
I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
The 12-year-old came with all those.
Yeah, that's all from the 12-year-old.
That's pretty legit.
She was also the first one to respond. The other ones took a little prodding to remind them, hey, send me back your lesson.
Prodding, or maybe they were getting deep thought.
That's probably what it was.
You know?
Probably what it was.
Yeah. That's a good list right there. I mean,
for a
that'd be
12-year-old.
really good for any adult to come up with that list of, hey, how about I teach my kids these things? So
Yeah. Should we do one more kid and then go to some other questions, and we'll finish with the other two
I'm
later?
just curious. I'm just curious to hear what the rest of your kids said.
So the next one's my 15-year-old daughter, who's playing Bingham basketball right now, and she's a 4-point student. She's a little bit of a perfectionist, and she's an absolute joy. It was her birthday yesterday. She said, always be willing to cut. Now, let me put that in context. That's a basketball phrase, but there's a metaphor to life that I've taught my children. In basketball, strong, aggressive defense often will thwart offense, especially when they're young and they panic and they get, what do I do? You know, and the defense steals the ball from them. The phrase always be willing to cut is, when life gives you a situation that creates resistance or an obstacle, you have to see that and then make a conscious decision to audible, if you're a quarterback, or in basketball, to cut to the basket. Create tools that when life gives you challenges, you have the ability to recognize the challenge and always be willing to cut. And I love the fact that that was her first thing, because I say in basketball over and over and over, the antidote for pressure is we got to be willing to cut. But as we talk about that as a family, that is a metaphor for life.
Adapt, pivot.
Yeah.
That's actually a pretty deep one.
That is very deep.
That a lot of parents, I'm sure they don't teach. You know, I just reread Built to Last. And actually one of the chapters, I can't remember what he calls it, but it's willing to cut. It's like the ability to adapt to what's coming at you. So you have this core ideology, these core principles that you live by. And you talked about a bunch of core principles with your 12-year-old. And then the ability to cut is see when things are coming at you that you need to not change your core principles, but adapt to, right? So that's very cool.
Well, and it's to open your eyes to opportunity too, right? Because normally when there's something going bad in your life, there's an opportunity to improve or an opportunity to pivot and find another opportunity that will be better than the one that you're currently pursuing. And if we can just have the mindset of, this isn't the end of the road, there's something else for me to learn. That's a valuable lesson to teach your kids.
As Kirk mentioned, I'm a huge basketball fan, a Jazz fan. I sit behind the opponent's bench. And in fact, the last podcast I did was called NBA Real Talk, and they wanted to hear my stories.
It wasn't NBA trash talk, was it?
It kind of.
A little bit, probably, knowing Bryce.
I noticed a little bit of a heckler to the other team, but basketball creates a lot of metaphors for life. And in Brielle, I love the fact that was her very first one.
Yeah.
And funny is, we'll watch the Jazz together, and if our guards are being pressured, she'll say, cut, you got to be willing to cut. Right? It's like,
I love it. I love it.
She's learning. So same thing as Miley. She said, work hard, play hard. That's her number 2. And then the next one, if you're going to do something, do your best. Again, a theme we've heard. Here's an important one that we say all the time around our house: choose to be humble, not compelled. So there's a quote out there that, you know, and my worldview, guys, is I'm a man of faith. I believe in God and you know, love the Christmas season and all the principles that come from that worldview that have helped me and my family. And one of the quotes that I share with my family is, hey, God will have a humble people. He just will. You can either choose to be humble or you can be compelled to be humble. So, and we say that oftentimes.
That's a great one.
And it came through in her comment. That was her number 4. Along that line, she said, look to be an example of Christ in your words and actions. And she kind of went on a little spiritual run here. If you stay faithful, you'll be blessed. Forgive others. And then it says, look to be a blessing to answer to someone else's prayer. And her last one is stay balanced. So on my desk, I have a rock that is inscribed on it, balance. And I sent to Corey a quote that's kind of a narrative.
Great quote. We both read it right before you got here.
It's a motto for my life. And And that is every day, be excellent at whatever you're choosing to be excellent, whether it's work or play. It's kind of seamless. Everything I do is play because I just love people. Even work is play, and play is work. You're working hard even to maximize your play time. And that pursuit of excellence, that pursuit of perfect balance kind of consumes me every day. And it's fun to see that the child recognize that. And she in her life has got that same passion. So she's working at how do I stay balanced. And as a family, we talk about that. Again, we talk about those 4 areas of their life. And I actually ask each one of them, what are you doing right now? What are your social goals this week? What are your intellectual goals? What are your physical goals? And we talk about those things. And rather than me tell my kids what their goals should be, I like to try to have them set their own goals. But my role as a father is to guide them into that way of thinking and a little bit of accountability so that they're sharing that with me and I can then give them insights.
Do you become the accountability partner with your kids in that situation?
Yeah, not in a, I think, over the top checklist way, but just an ability to come back to things that they said are important to them and allow them to be accountable more to themselves. So I don't want to burn them out on accountability as a dad, and I don't want to be their business coach, and I don't want to be their boss. But I do think that role of having a systematic or regular way for them to hold themselves accountable, I think for me is what I'm after.
I really like that.
I feel like our job is to inspire, right? Like not as much hold them accountable. It's if you're trying to inspire them to just be a little better every day and to walk that path towards whatever their vision is. I think when you're trying to inspire your kids, the accountability comes without you being on them and a heavy thumb, right? Like it comes by, tell me your goal. They know you care about that. Tell me how it's going. Tell me how I can help.
Yeah. Well, if that was a one-time thing, right? If that was a one-time conversation that you had with them and you never revisited it, then you're the taskmaster. But if you come back to it on a weekly or a monthly basis and say, how is this going? Can I do anything to help you? What you're doing then is you're helping them to develop good habits. And those habits will serve them even when you're not having weekly or monthly meetings with them. So
yeah, well said.
You also brought something with you here to the studio, which it's very compelling to me. These very nicely designed, framed things that I assume hang on the wall in your home. Tell us what those are and the process that you used to create those.
Yeah, and thanks for asking about process, because that was actually one of the fun parts of this. So as Corey mentioned, my day job is to run a business, and as a result of that, and I'm naturally very left-brained, and I come from a corporate thinking standpoint, and I've applied that to some of my family dynamics. Again, I try to adjust because not everybody in my family thinks naturally the same way I do, and so there's some adjustments there. But in our company, we obviously had a mission statement and a list of values. And that was big as we built our company here in town, just to get buy-in and to get direction and to state to the world and to ourselves what we were all about. And many years ago, when our children were small, I think our oldest would have been maybe 10, 11, 12, and the youngest would have been 4 or so. I had this desire to be very intentional with what we said we were about as a family. So we came up with a mission statement that was underpinned by a list of values. And one night, we had a whiteboard. I'm a big whiteboard guy in a business setting or a family setting. And we just brainstormed. And I said, guys, I want everybody to just think about what's important to you in your life. And we went around, the 6 of us, and everybody just said something. And it could be silly, it could be profound, it could be whatever. There was no right or wrong answer. True brainstorm, right? Unfiltered. And I just wrote all of these words of what is important to us. What do we value? And then as a father, what we did is we then took that, and it was probably 40 different phrases or words, right? Before we were tapped out. We then took those things and combined some of them that were similar themes or modified kind of some phrasing and then lumped some things together. And what we came up with was a list of 11 family values. Now, some of those family values have a compound, there's 2 parts to the value. But what we were able to do then is we were able to codify what the Blanchard family said we were all about. And here's the important thing. It wasn't a top-down decision. It was from the bottom up. And I was only 1/6 of the input. Now I shaped, of course, the final product into a format that I felt like best served our purposes. But they had buy-in. As kids, they got to say what was important to them, and that got incorporated into the list of the 11 family values. And then so that it wasn't just something we did one time and hang on the wall, as part of our regular family time that we do once a week, most of the time, from time to time, I would assign out, 4 of the 11 values to the 4 kids and said, hey, come prepared this week to teach us what that value really means and how we're applying it in our family.
That's a killer idea.
Yeah. Because then it emphasizes, and again, I'm a big believer in not just top-down preaching, right? They all know where I stand. Dad's preached and taught and, a lot. What I found as a father is more important is getting them to exercise their brains and their voices and their contexts to teach each other and me and my wife what these things mean. And that has been rewarding to see them teach me what our values are as a family and reinforce it. Obviously, then, as we all know, the teacher learns the most, right? Mm-hmm. So when you give your kids the opportunity in a home setting to be the teacher, man, that's powerful. They eventually drown us out, right? But when they're each talking, they really listen to each other too. Because they're like, okay, this is new. It's not just mom and dad preaching. So that's been a fun part of our family culture. And then we had a mission statement that summed up kind of all the values into an actual statement of what we're all about as a family. And that's something that we don't sit around and read it in unison, like the Pledge of Allegiance, but we have done that from time to time. And sometimes I'll have one of the kids, hey, read us the mission statement. Let's just check in and see how we're doing. And those have been valuable tools to guide our family.
That's cool. Is it cool if we take a picture of those after the podcast and share it with the folks that are listening? That'd be awesome.
Huge believer in best practices in this. And it's one of the reasons I'm really grateful you guys are doing this. And I really enjoyed the last one that I listened to with Jeff Rust. I took away some great things from what he taught. So this is a wonderful thing. Love to share.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I mean, that's really what this is about, is best practices, because we don't talk about these things in a business setting. If I come to see you at your office, likelihood of us ending up in this conversation is quite low. If you meet with Corey, same thing. Like maybe on a golf course, maybe on a trip, but those are so few and far between. Those experiences need to be more regular. So that's the whole idea behind this conversation, is the best practices of people who we see in our lives are great fathers. What are you doing?
Yeah. And we can all use
what's
the help.
Worked.
Tell you what.
There's no textbook on this.
There's nothing more humbling than being a father.
Yeah, amen.
I mean, it takes you to your knees and you're like, okay, how do I help? What do I do?
Right. Well, it's like Jeff said last week, to father is to fail. Like you always have the opportunity to turn around and say, I probably could have done that just slightly different.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that, Bryce. Is there anything where you look back and you say, I wish I would have just done this different, or done this earlier, or switched the way I approached a specific situation? Is there anything you look back and go, because sometimes that's the best thing to learn from, right?
I've learned a lot, and I don't like the word regret, but I do like the word learning.
There you go, learning
and adapting. And as a father, I continue to learn and adapt. And I'll give some props to my dad and my granddad. I've come from a line of men that have worked hard to be good dads. My granddad had 8 children in Oregon, rural Oregon, and was poor. Had 2 homes burned to the ground without insurance. Worked all his life, got polio in his 30s and lost the use of his legs, and yet stayed a hardworking, faithful cabinet maker till the end of his life. And a lot of respect for Grandpa Melvin. And my dad was one of his 8 children, and my dad didn't have a college education, and yet found a way through just hard work and hustle and determination and a love for people to become successful in this world. And I got to see his journey, which had a lot of curves to it. He tried to fail at a lot of different times, and yet through it all, my dad wanted to take what his dad did well and improve on it. So there's that phrase in life called cycle breaking. And I think the Blanchard men are trying to continue to improve the cycles. And as fathers, I think that's what we can do. We can look at what worked well for when I was a child. What did my dad do well, and try to repeat that, and then say, okay, I think before I talk about what I learned, I watched my father and his father and said, okay, here's the things that I liked, and here's the things that maybe I can do a little bit better. And my dad was the first one to encourage me to do that. He's like, Bryce, there's no perfect playbook for this. So let me give you some tools, and then you take it up a level, will you? And I'm trying to have my kids do the same thing without putting too much pressure on them for perfection. But I would say, as I've learned, and let me just say this: the Blanchards have I feel like we've been successful, you guys, but there's no perfect family out there. And we've had our trials. We've had family counseling in our home, where we've had to have somebody come in and give us tools and ways to deal with things in our family dynamic that we needed help with. And so one of the things I learned from a period of time where we had some counseling was the power of the word "and." And what I would tell you guys is, as parents, as fathers, I think I was so desirous to have my children be awesome and to learn everything that I learned from my dad, but take it up another level, guys. And sometimes that puts a culture of pressure and expectation and perfection on your children that can actually be counterproductive. And I think as a young father, I think there's a balance between setting high expectations for behavior for your kids, but also this safety net of unconditional love and acceptance that they are who they are, and they need the space to make mistakes and trial and error, and not necessarily be you or the perfect child that you want them to be. And as a father, as an ambitious guy who wants everything in life every day and to make the most of it, I wanted perfect children. Not for me to feel successful, but for them, right? Just this passion I have for life. And I think sometimes that put too much pressure on my children. And I think that pressure and that expectation can sometimes backfire. And so the word "and" is a powerful concept. And so what I would say to myself and to the other fathers out there listening is, let's have the appropriate balance of creating great expectations for behavior and results and achievement for our children, and let them know that it's okay to fail and that you love them no matter what, and that life's hard and that they're their own person and they don't need to be a projection of who you want them to be. And I think those are some layers of growth that as a father, as I've raised now 2 kids that are in college. I got one down at Dixie State and one that's going back up to Utah State, and then 2 kids that are, 9th and 7th grade. I've been humbled to realize that, hey, this journey is fraught with challenges, and I got to love them unconditionally. And I've got to find the "and" where I'm creating both those high expectations for a life well lived, but also this just unconditional love and acceptance for who they are and the mistakes that they're going to make. And that journey's been interesting for me. And if had I got to that a little quicker, I think I would have been better off as a father. So that'd be and again, not a regret. It's just part of my learning as a father. But that'd be the biggest paradigm that I'd share is the power of that duality of high expectations, but also unconditional love.
Yeah. If you're a listener, I would listen to that again. When I listen to it, I'm going to listen to what he just said again. There's a powerful lesson in the "and" that you just explained. And for parents, that's a hard lesson to learn. I think we all have to find that "and" of unconditional love and inspiring them to be their best. Yeah. You summed it up better than many have in the past. I don't know about you, but I learned it late also, the same "and" that you're talking about. And so the poor older kids, I feel like my older kids got the brunt of the younger dad. And my dad said the same thing to me. I remember when I got home from a service mission and my dad is treating my younger brother and sister like with no accountability and no expectation. What in the heck is going on here? And he's like, "Oh, you'll learn over time." Well, I didn't. I had to learn it on my own. I didn't learn from my dad that same kind of principle. But anyway, I don't know if it's the same way at your house. My older kids got the brunt of the young Corey.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And we got to just understand that's how it is and not beat ourselves up over it. But there's no question I'm a better father today having been through it. And that's where you guys are doing some important work with this podcast, because we can all learn best practices and ramp up that learning curve. There's nothing that trumps our own personal learning experience, but if you can listen to other people's experiences and incorporate those lessons sooner in your fatherhood, then that'd be awesome. Yeah.
So we got to get back to the last 2 kids. I want to hear their answers to this question. I don't want to run out of time on that because those are powerful things. It's
giving us a great outline and context to this podcast. It's honestly fantastic.
So I want you to repeat the question for people who maybe are catching this and didn't pay attention to that very first part. So repeat the question and then tell us what those other 2 kids said. Because I would love to ask this identical question to my kids.
Let's all do it. Let's everybody do that.
That's like an action item for this podcast.
Yeah, let's all do it. Because it was super insightful for me to see what lessons have actually gotten through to them without me prompting them at all. So the question I simply texted each one of my children was, can you share with me lessons or principles I have taught you as a father that have been most meaningful? So this is to them, not what they think is most important to me. So moving on to my son, he was the most brief of the 4 children. That's, that's guys, right?
Teenage guy, really.
So we're 3 for 3 on this one, guys. Work hard, play hard. That was the first one on all 3 of them.
I think our family would be 3 for 3 on that one also.
Yeah. I mean,
that was one of our mottos growing up too. So
love it.
It's just a great one.
It just really is. And then similar to my 12-year-old, his very next thought was work hard first so that you have the time and money for the things you want. So, and I tell that to young guys all the time. Sometimes they see success of those of us in the business world that are making good things happen. And they say, okay, how'd you get there? And they want to kind of skip steps. I'm like, you got to pay your dues. You got to grind at the front side of your life, or you can coast and work for the man and still be working, for a salary and whatever in your 60s and 70s. And that's okay. There's no shame in that either. That's certain people's perspectives. But for me, how I'm wired and how I've chosen my children to have the opportunity to benefit from is to front load the work in their life, and then everything else that you want, the playtime, the resources, the freedoms, they come to you sooner. And I'm glad to hear that my 18-year-old has figured that out, because if he wants to coast, then, those rewards get put off that much longer in your life. And the third thing he said was care about everyone and make sure that they can feel that, which is something also that I think both of my younger daughters said. And I'm grateful as a father that hasn't just been lip service that I've given them, that they've taken that to heart. That means a lot to me, because, I think that adaptation of how you do anything is how you do everything. I think how you treat anyone is how you should treat everyone. And I'm really pleased that my kids are feeling that. If I've done something as a father, to me, that's more meaningful even than the work hard, play hard thing. So my 20-year-old, this is great. No one needs a whole 12 ounces.
You're going to have to tell us about this
Well,
one.
listen, I'm a big believer in healthy lifestyle. And I think 12 ounces of sugar soda is ridiculous for anybody. And so and the other thing that bothers me is people will drink 4 ounces of a 12-ounce soda and the rest of it will sit on the counter and go flat. Well, my dad grew up poor. We grew up poor and then back and forth. He did well and then we struggled. And so I've lived the need to be frugal in a very authentic way. And so I hate waste. So the fact that my 20-year-old says no one needs a whole 12 ounces, it's both from a caloric intake, plus we, oftentimes we'll share desserts at a restaurant. Not everybody needs their own 3 scoops of ice cream. Let's get 2 or 3 and let's share. And that's something that she's really frugal. I appreciate that. That's her first one. The second thing is life is expensive. Sometimes these kids have no idea what the real meaning of a dollar is. I hesitate sometimes to bring my kids to my seats. We'll go get cheaper jazz seats, even upper bowls, just so that we can experience what real life is for most people. And I think one of the hard things for the fathers that are listening that have done well in life is sometimes the successes of our life jade the relative value of dollars and things for our children. And so I will constantly talk to them about the fact that, hey, if you order a large Blizzard, it's only 60 cents more and you're getting double the ounces, and then you share it with your sibling, you just saved $3.49. And you got as much product as 2 smalls. And we'll actually do the math together and talk about the importance of frugal living. Because just because I've done well doesn't mean they're going to do well. And that's fine with me. If they want to be a humble school teacher, I am thrilled with that. I could care less. More money, more problems oftentimes in life. What I want my children to do is work hard and be passionate, be good people, not necessarily achieve maximum dollars. It's not what this life is about. So, but when we do have an environment where we've been blessed with lots of resources, I think as fathers, we've got to continue to do a reality check with our children. And one of the things I tell them all the time, guys, is life is expensive. And we talk about that means. I mean, they don't understand insurance and taxes and repairs and just things cost a lot nowadays. And I've also taught my kids there's no safety net. I think one of the worst things you can do as a father is curtail their own hunger, their own ambition by creating a financial safety net. Now, of course, I'm going to support my kids. I help them with college. And if they had a great business idea, maybe I'd co-invest with them. But at the end of the day, there is no trust fund in my house. Never will be. And they know that. Because if you take away the grind and the hunger, you're actually retarding your kids in their growth. Their personal growth is in many ways damned. And I see that with successful fathers. One of the hard things is that how do I reach my kids and help them appreciate the value of a dollar and hard work? And that's something that we've worked hard for with our kids. And they know to this day. We have a family plan that we put together that explains what post-high school graduation support looks like and what it doesn't look like. Everything from insurance to cars to cell phones, and it's merit-based. So there's a baseline of support that dad and mom give. And if they want more support than that through their next phase of time until they're married, then there's some qualifiers based on achievement and earning. And if they don't want to do that, that's fine, but now it's on you. So even tuition participation drops off for mom and dad unless they maintain a certain GPA. Otherwise, I create an animal where there's no consequences to their choices and their own desire to achieve.
That's huge. I would love for you to share that with me.
I've actually shared that with a lot of dads. To our point about best practices, I have forwarded that to I've got a billionaire real estate client in Las Vegas, and we were having a lunch, and he was picking he's got 4 little boys. He was picking my brain on fatherhood stuff, and I was telling him, Ernie, he said, will you just send that to me? I'm sure. I said, I sure will. And I just copied and pasted it because that was something I came up with. My oldest was 15. I thought, what's important for me as a father is to let them know what's coming. What kind of work expectations I have for them in college, what I will be paying for, what I won't be, and what is their level of achievement that continues to allow them to benefit from that. And now it's fair. And it's fair for all 4 of you. You all have the same playbook, and you choose how much support you get from mom and dad.
Yeah, mine's 15 now. My oldest is 15, and we're already having those conversations, even at 15, right? Well, if like I'm telling her, you can have any car you want, you just have to pay for half of it.
That's exactly what I do.
Half. And then it's the same thing with grades. I'll pay for your cell phone and you can have it full time, all the time, whatever you want. But if the grades go down, then, the phone's going to go away for X amount of time.
So
right?
important, Corey.
But to put that in, to move that forward so she can see that that's going to keep happening right through college, those kind of decisions. And there's times when I make it easy. Like, I believe there's some books out there that are like principle-based, amazing books, right? Whether it be How to Win Friends and Influence People or 7 Habits or some of those kind of books. And I say, hey, I'll pay you if you read those books. You got to read them, and then you got to give me a book report. And if you do that, I'll actually pay you to read it, and that'll help you get your car. And so I think taking what you're doing at a little bit higher level, and you've been through a little bit, your daughter's a little older than mine now by 5 years. That'd be cool to share.
I will share that with you. There's 3 highlights I'll point out to the audience. One is, here's the problem. If I say I'm paying for tuition, which I'm happy to do as a father based on my circumstances in life, but if I say that, what incentive do they have now to get a scholarship, to go apply for scholarships? Yes. None, right? So in my plan, I say, if you get a scholarship, that reduces dad's tuition. You get half of that back in cash. I win because if you get a $2,000 scholarship, I'm getting $1,000 off tuition, and you get a $1,000 benefit. If you want mom and dad's tuition support to continue into your junior and senior year, here's your minimum GPA. If not, that's fine. We'll pay for your auto insurance, but after your second violation or wreck, you're now paying for half. They got to have skin in the game. Kids need skin in the game. So My son right now is paying half of insurance because he's got 1 ticket and 1 wreck. My daughter's got 1 more strike left. But now that creates a life where things matter. One of the problems is when we have this prosperous life, kids actually have a hard time finding happiness because there's no context. It's like everything's just kind of easy and I'm floating and I haven't earned anything. I don't have any skin in this game. So as fathers, we have to create paradigms where the kids have buy-in. I love what you said. We have the exact same prototype, Corey. We'll provide you with a clunker, $2, $3, $4 grand at no cost. But if you'd like to own your own car and pick what you'd like, something fun, something sporty, something nicer, you get to buy half, we'll buy half. And at the end, if you don't have the full down payment, you can pay me in payments. 2 of my kids are doing payments right now, both the 18 and 20-year-old. You get the keys.
That teaches them about loans and financial responsibility. And I'm assuming the car goes away if they don't make their payments or something.
For sure. For sure. We just have to reinforce that life has consequences, right?
Yeah. I love that. I think a lot of people, they'll do like their financial planning, right? They'll sit down with their trust attorney and they say all of these things. And if I die, my wife dies, this is what we want to happen to our money, right? And I have a bunch of those things written into my trust that says, you have to be, if I'm going to pay for your college, then you need to go to college and get a certain GPA and certain qualifiers like we've talked. But this has been an aha for me today is you don't have to wait till you're dead for your kids to have those qualifiers. And I have very extensive, detailed instructions for my kids as minors written into my trust, but I don't have anything done like this. It's kind of just been, we'll take it. We've done the car thing exactly like you just described it, but it's not written anywhere. And I need to write it down so that those expectations for all 4 of my kids are exactly the same.
Yeah. I'll share that written plan with you guys when we're done with the podcast. It's been something I've loved to share with people, and it set me free as a father because I've now put everything out there, and now they're accountable for their own choices.
And yeah, you can edit it to your own circumstances.
The last phrase in there, Kirk, great point, is this is subject to parental adaptation. So I have the ability.
Terms and conditions.
Well, because one of my children he should be a lawyer. He can figure out loopholes and things. I'm like, whoa. Hey, just because I didn't phrase it that way, that doesn't mean I don't have the right to adapt this.
And part of you is like, gosh darn it, kid. And part of you is like, love it.
I know. I'm proud of him. Like,
my oldest is that way. I'm like, babe, yours should be an attorney because you can talk yourself into anything.
It's so awesome.
So there's some more on the 20-year-old.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. We'll finish up with the 20-year-old. So life was expensive was the last one. She said it's important to have balance and structure in life, to mix productivity and fun into each day. Next one is remember to acknowledge the Lord in all things. In the stock market, you got to buy when it's low and sell when it's high. Don't be afraid of a decline. Just ride it out. I love the fact that she did a stock market. So I did a lesson one time, you guys, to help them understand how investments work. And I allowed each one of them, this was maybe 5 years ago, to pick a stock that they would own. And Dad would front the money, and then we would share the gains. And they could sell that stock during the year, or they could sell half of it and buy something else. And each one of my kids then owned their stock for the year. And they started checking the stock market every day. And my one daughter, who's at the time like 6 or 7, was like, Mom, let's drive Home Depot. I want to see how full the parking lot is, because she had picked Home Depot. And it went nuts. At the end of the year, I paid them in cash their share of the profits. And that was such an amazing example and experience for them to have. And again, in this case, it wasn't skin in the game. I fronted the down. But it allowed them to watch and benefit from the joys of investing. And my son, bless his heart, his went down. So here I am giving large money to the 3 girls who had Target, Home Depot, and Microsoft, I think were their 3. And my son had picked an oil stock, and it was when oil prices went down. And so he had a loss. So here was the fun thing. We created another experience where he was feeling bad. And I was going to say, it is what it is. Life's hard. He gets nothing. But I pulled my daughters aside. I said, guys, have you noticed that Trey's pretty bummed out? They're like, yeah. Which, he picks on them sometimes. So in some way, maybe they were enjoying it. I said, in the real life, people that do well in investments often take care of others that maybe haven't done as well. There's opportunities for charity things and things like that. There's taxes that we pay to support a higher burden of municipal budget needs and things like that. I said, in this environment, do you guys feel like you'd like to participate, perhaps taking a portion of your winnings or your investment proceeds and sharing any of that with your brother who got nothing? And they all kind of looked at me and said, yeah, we'll do that. So it was kind of cool, because then we brought Trey up, and each one of them handed him a portion of their winnings so that he had at least somewhat of a positive experience from that same year-long exercise. And we went a whole year.
That's a great idea. I haven't done that with my kids. I put that on the list of to-dos. That's a great,
really fun, to teach them
process.
How
and you probably went through and explained to them.
We went through PE ratios, dividend yields. So I listed on the board, here's all the stocks that Dad's in right now, and here's some other ones. And then they either picked from that list or they picked their own. And we actually taught about PE ratios and these things.
That's killer.
Yeah, it was really, really fun. A few more from my 20-year-old. Communication is the key to any relationship.
Amen to that.
Whenever you start something and decide to really commit to it, it's best to have the failure is not an option mindset.
Burn the ships.
Yeah, love it, right? And she's definitely taken that to heart. She's got 4 more on here. We can choose our actions, but not our consequences. It is important to be a good steward of all resources we are blessed with. No need to waste. And the last 2, have a mental checklist of things and always place important things in the same spot to keep your life more organized. I hate losing something, and I hate forgetting something. And so as I've taught my children, and I think this resonate with them, is the important things in your life, always put them in the exact same place. Then you never have to say, well, where did I leave my wallet? Where are my keys? And then before you go or leave something, you go through a mental checklist of all the things that you need. Like, for example, when I dress myself in the morning, if I'm taking clothes to the gym, because I'm going to shower at the gym, I literally from top to bottom dress myself to make sure I haven't forgotten anything. And that process of mental checklist, if we can show our kids that ability to be organized and thoughtful so that they're not forgetting to do things, and, that they're creating accountability lists of things, that commitments they've made in life, has been a good one.
My wife's going to listen to this podcast and say, you need to do that, buddy.
Mental checklist.
Love it.
Last one is, you never know if you never try or ask. So, you don't get if you don't ask. That's something that they have been taught.
Well, one takeaway that I am definitely going to take away from this podcast is your kids sound like they have internalized lots of amazing principles and are amazing kids. And so, do you want to say anything to your kids on the podcast?
Well, if they listen to it, which I don't know if they will, but I mean, I love them. The fact is, they're just awesome, and I'm thrilled to see that some of the things that I've talked about have been internalized by them, and I'm their biggest cheerleader, and I just love them so much. And
the second takeaway is, these are lucky kids to have a dad like you. So, way to be intentional. We don't usually bring people on the podcast to say, look at how good of a dad this guy is, right? But, you've taught me a lot of things today that I'm grateful for, and hopefully the listeners have gotten some of those things and been inspired to do some of their own things in their own home. We always end the podcast by asking a question, and that is, what do you think it means to be a gentleman?
I think there's a few thoughts that come to my mind. One is how you treat everyone. And this has been a theme that we've already talked about so far for my kids. But I think a gentleman treats the receptionist the same as he does the CEO, and authentically. You're not faking it. There was a time in my life where I feel like I was, I was just self-centered. Life was about me. It was about my achievements and who I was and what other people thought of me. And that, I think, was my main mindset. And I think there's a principle in life that allowed me to convert to that young guy to somebody that was maybe closer to a gentleman. And that paradigm shift was, I call it the gift of charity. And it's a gift that you can get, and it's a worldview that you take upon yourself. And it's to view every other person walking this planet as a brother or a sister, literally. And in your interactions with that person, your desire is, how can I leave this conversation or this smile or this competition making that person feel better about who they are and better for having met me and interfaced with me today. And that gift of charity was not something that I got of my own. Like I said, I'm the first to say that in my younger years, I think I was more about me and prideful, and I wanted to win and beat and all those things, which is fine if it's put in its proper place in your life. But when I really felt like I have become more of a gentleman, and I still have strivings to be much better, was when I operated that gift of charity in my life. And I'll tell you what, it has come back to bless me in business, in my relationships, because it's something that changes your heart and your nature. Because you want everybody that you see you want them to feel like they're important, and that you're lifting them up that day. And that worldview, to have that gift of charity, of brotherhood and sisterhood on this planet. I mean, imagine if every person that got up in the morning had that as a mindset, how the world would just be awesome.
Very different world.
And like I said, that's aspirational. I don't get to be that all the time. But when I think of the ultimate gentleman, to me, that's the guy. It's walking and talking and lifting everybody around him and viewing everybody, even the person that cut him off in the freeway, with a thumbs up. Hey, I've been there too. I've had to cut people off. And as we allow that perspective of being a true gentleman to operate in our daily lives, blessings come to us and wins come to us, and all the things that we want, I think, flow naturally to us when we start to feel like I'm a gentleman to the other people on this planet.
Very well said, Bryce. If I were listening and those were my kids' replies to the question that you asked him, I'd be very proud, and you should be a very proud dad. I love your answer to what it means to be a gentleman. And for those listening, be a lady, be a gentleman, and raise ladies and gentlemen. That's why we do this podcast, right? We're trying to inspire as many people as possible to learn and be fed from people like Bryce on how to make the world a better place. And you can certainly start by what you just said, by loving those around you authentically and treating them the way they ought to be treated as children of God, right? So thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure, guys. Love what you're doing.
Thanks, Bryce. Thanks for joining us today on the podcast. It's been an awesome time. We thank Bryce Blanchard for his time away from his family and his business to be here with us, and we appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
If you enjoyed the podcast, please like and share the podcast with somebody that you love. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please head over to Apple Podcasts, wherever you consume your social media and your podcasts, and like and subscribe. Give us a rating. We sure do appreciate that. Have a great week. I'm Kirk Chug.
And I'm Corey Moore. Go be and raise, ladies and gentlemen.